Ever feel like you're juggling a million things at once?
Mm.
Leading a team, pushing projects forward, switching hats between different roles, and it all just feels like a tangled mess.
Oh, absolutely. It's a common experience, especially in academic health centers. You're not just wearing one hat, right? You might be a clinician, an educator, a researcher, maybe even taking on some administrative tasks, and all in the same week, maybe even the same day.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a constant balancing act. And that's exactly why we took a deep dive into this article, Leads Plus Developmental Model, proposing a new model based on an integrative conceptual review. It's like a crash course on a new way to look at how leadership skills develop in these complex academic health center environments.
That's a great way to put it, a crash course. So this deep dive is all about understanding this new Lides Plus model, and we'll explore how it can offer some really valuable insights as you navigate all those different roles in healthcare and academia.
And the article really hits on this key challenge, right? Leaders in AHCs often have to juggle multiple roles, and each one comes with its own set of responsibilities and expectations. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
No, not at all. And, events like the recent pandemic, they really highlighted any gaps in leadership that existed in these complex systems. It brought those vulnerabilities to the forefront.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why the authors saw a need for a more tailored model, something that could better support leaders who are juggling all these different positions, often with different levels of seniority and expertise. So that's where the LS plus model comes in.
Exactly. It's like a response to that very specific need. Now, some of our listeners might already be familiar with the original LEDS framework. It's become pretty popular in Canadian healthcare, and it's been adopted in different ways internationally, too.
Oh, yeah. ALAIDS, it focuses on those 5 key domains, right? Leading self, engaging others, achieving results, developing coalitions, and systems transformation.
You got it. It's a really solid framework. It's been a great foundation for leadership development. But, and here's the key point the article brings up, while LEADS is valuable, it doesn't fully address the specific challenges that come up when you're a leader with multiple roles at different levels of seniority, and all within these really integrated systems like AHCs.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like, take that first domain, leading self. It kind of assumes you have this one single unified professional identity, but that's not always the case in AHCs, is it?
Not really, no. What happens when you're operating with multiple professional identities at the same time? Maybe you're a clinician, a researcher, and a mentor all at once, and each of those comes with a different level of authority and experience. That's where the LEADS framework on its own might not fully capture the nuances of that situation.
And that's exactly the gap this new Leads Plus model is trying to fill, right? It's addressing that complexity.
Exactly. The LANS plus developmental model builds upon the existing LEDS framework, but it specifically considers what happens when you have to balance leadership and followership in multiple roles. And those roles might come with different levels of seniority. So it's acknowledging that dynamic interplay. And it identifies 4 distinct styles of engagement that you might see within an AHC.
It's like a spectrum, starting with essential followership, where you're mostly learning and taking in information, then moving through to strategic followership, where you're more proactive and aligned with the organization, and then progressing to role-based leadership, which is often linked to a formal title or position, and finally reaching complexity-based leadership, which kind of operates across and beyond individual roles.
That's a great summary. It's a really thoughtful progression. And what's particularly interesting is how the authors went about developing this LEDS Plus model. It wasn't just theoretical. They did what's called an integrative conceptual review. Basically, they brought together different frameworks and looked at how they connect and inform each other.
So they combined the LEDS framework with another influential model, Keegan's model of human development.
Yes, exactly. Now, think of Keegan's model as describing how our understanding of ourselves and how we interact with the world kind of evolves and becomes more sophisticated over time. Like our internal operating system upgrades, allowing us to handle more complexity. So, in a way, the LEDS Plus model connects different leadership styles to these different levels of understanding and operating.
I like that analogy, the operating system upgrade. So they merged these 2 frameworks and then they tested them out.
Yeah, they did. They described these cycles of divergent and convergent thinking. So first, they brainstormed a wide range of ideas, and then they systematically narrowed it down to the most promising ones. They even used simulated personas, almost like creating characters and different roles within an AHC, just to see how the model would work in real-world scenarios.
That's a really clever way to put the model through its paces. And it wasn't just the authors working on this in isolation, was it? They also got feedback from people who actually work in these settings.
Oh, absolutely. Feedback from knowledge users was crucial. They wanted input from people in healthcare leadership, medical education, and leadership development. This back and forth helped them refine the model and make sure it was relevant and practical.
Makes sense. And how was the model received? Did it resonate with these knowledge users?
Yeah, it did. The article mentions that the refined Allies Plus model got a really high level of endorsement from the knowledge users, like a 7.93 out of 10. So it seems like it really connected with people's real-world experiences in those complex environments.
That's really encouraging to hear. Okay, so let's break down these four stages of the LAIDS Plus developmental model. First up, we have essential followership. What does that look like in practice?
Think of it as the starting point. This is when someone is new to an organization or role, they're still learning the ropes and need guidance. A good example from the article is a new clinician who just graduated and is starting their job in a cardiac rehabilitation unit.
Okay, so in this stage, they're really relying on the more experienced team members for direction. They're soaking up all that practical know-how, the unwritten rules of the team, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's about absorbing that tacit knowledge. It's the stuff you learn by being there, by doing and observing, not just by reading a manual.
So it's about actively learning how things work, building relationships with colleagues, and understanding the values and the dynamics of the team. It's a foundational stage.
Absolutely. They might not be leading initiatives yet, but they're laying the groundwork.
Right. You got to start somewhere. Okay, what about the next stage? Strategic followership. How is that different from essential followership?
So in this stage, individuals are becoming more established. They're looking to contribute more strategically and align themselves with the organization's overall goals.
So they're thinking beyond just following instructions. They're thinking about the bigger picture, how their work fits into the organization's objectives. The article gives that example of a finance manager.
Yes, the finance manager who reports to a department head and is now proactively trying to find cost-saving opportunities. But these opportunities, they're not just random. They specifically support the department's strategic priorities.
So it's like they're stepping up and taking more ownership. They're demonstrating leadership qualities, even though they might not have a formal leadership title.
Exactly. It's what we call leading from any seat. It's distributed leadership in action.
Okay, makes sense. So moving on to the next stage, role-based leadership. This seems more like the traditional idea of what a leader is, someone with a specific title and authority.
Yeah, you're right. This is where people take on those formal leadership roles. Like in the article, they talk about a department chair. Leadership here is very much defined by the responsibilities and boundaries of that particular position.
And the article mentions this interesting concept from Keegan, interpersonal mutuality. What exactly does that mean in this context?
Basically, it means that these leaders tend to define their success and even their sense of professional identity through how well their team does. They see it as a two-way street. They support and guide their team, and the team's success reflects back on them as a leader.
It's a symbiotic relationship, in a way.
Mhm.
But the article also hints that this focus on the team can sometimes limit collaboration between different groups. Why is that?
It's a really good point. Because these leaders are often assessed and rewarded based on their own team's performance, it can sometimes create silos. The focus on their team's goals might make it harder to prioritize collaborating with other departments, especially if those collaborations don't directly benefit their own team's objectives.
Yeah, I can see how that could happen. It's like everyone's working towards their own individual goals, and it can be hard to see the bigger picture sometimes. Okay, so finally, we reach the most complex stage, complexity-based leadership. What sets these leaders apart?
Complexity-based leaders, they operate on a different level. They can see beyond a single role or professional identity. They can reconcile all their different responsibilities and see the organization as this complex, interconnected system. The article talks about these leaders self-authoring their leadership roles.
Self-authoring. So they're not just sticking to a predefined path. They're actively shaping their roles to meet the needs of the whole organization.
Precisely. They're connecting with people across different departments, spotting opportunities, and addressing issues that go beyond any one team or program. Their focus is on achieving results that benefit multiple groups, the institution as a whole, not just their own unit. Like the article gives the example of a vice president of innovation and research.
Yeah, someone who can use their experience as a clinician, administrator, and professor, and their network of connections to get funding for projects that address the needs of many different parts of the AHC.
Exactly. They're breaking down those silos, bringing people together, and tackling those big picture goals that go beyond the immediate responsibilities of any one department.
So they have a much wider perspective. Now, the article also talks about this concept of versatility. How does that fit into these 4 stages of development?
Versatility in this context is about being able to adapt your leadership or followership style depending on the situation. It's recognizing that you're not stuck in one stage. You can move between these different modes of engagement as needed.
It's like being a chameleon, changing your approach to fit the environment. I remember the example in the article, the department chair during a public health crisis.
Yeah, great example. In that situation, the chair might need to be very decisive, leading their own department, but then also step back and be a collaborative follower when working with a larger clinical group that's coordinating the overall response.
So you have to be flexible, able to shift gears depending on what the situation calls for. And it's not necessarily a linear progression through these stages, is it?
Not at all. You might show characteristics of complexity-based leadership in one context, but then need to be in essential followership mode when you're in a new and unfamiliar situation.
It's about having a range of leadership and followership skills and knowing when to use which ones. It's about being adaptable.
Absolutely. So you mentioned the feedback from the knowledge users earlier. What were some of the main takeaways from those conversations? What did people think of the model?
Well, overall, it got really positive feedback, which is great. People felt that the Leanize Plus model was comprehensive. They said it really captured the different stages of leadership development. It resonated with their own experiences of juggling multiple roles in AHCs.
It's validating to see a model that reflects the realities of the work, right? It's not just some abstract theory.
Exactly. What other insights did they share?
They thought it could be really useful for designing leadership development programs. They also saw its value for self-reflection, like helping people understand where they are in their own leadership journey. And it could be helpful for coaching and mentoring, too.
So lots of potential applications there. What about the combination of LAs with Keegan's model? Did people find that helpful?
Yeah, they really liked that. They felt like it added more depth and nuance to understanding how leadership develops.
That's great to hear. Now, were there any concerns or areas for improvement that people brought up?
Yeah, there were a few things. Some people thought the model was a bit complex, which could make it difficult to apply in practice. They also worried that it might be seen as a hierarchy, with complexity-based leadership being the ultimate goal, which isn't really the point.
Yeah, you wouldn't want people to feel like they're less than if they're not at that complexity-based leadership stage. Each stage has its value depending on the context.
Exactly. And some people also pointed out that the model, as it stands, is a bit static. It doesn't fully reflect the fact that leadership development can be messy and nonlinear. It doesn't always follow a straight path.
And it doesn't explicitly address the influence of organizational culture, right?
Yeah.
Like the specific opportunities and constraints that people face in their own workplaces.
Right, and the authors do acknowledge these limitations. They see this model as a starting point. They point out that it needs more empirical evidence and that it's mainly based on the North American context. More research is definitely needed.
It's a work in progress, but a really promising one. The article also talks about the broader implications of the Leanize Plus model, right? How it could be used to improve things on a larger scale.
Yeah, they suggest that it could be a really helpful framework for designing better leadership development programs that are more tailored to the specific needs of AHCs. And it could also inform human resource planning, helping organizations figure out what leadership and followership skills are most important for different roles and departments.
So shifting gears a little bit, what's the key takeaway for our listener, the learner? What should they take away from this deep dive into the Leanize Plus developmental model?
I think the main message is that this model gives us a much more nuanced understanding of what leadership looks like, especially in the context of academic health centers. It recognizes that people often have to juggle multiple roles and that their leadership style might shift between leadership and followership, depending on the situation and their stage of development.
So just to remind everyone, the 4 stages are essential followership, strategic followership, role-based leadership, and complexity-based leadership. And it's all underpinned by this important concept of versatility.
Absolutely. Understanding this model can be a great tool for self-reflection. It can help you understand where you are in your own leadership journey, how different modes of engagement are playing out in your workplace, and how you might approach things differently in the future.
It sounds like it can help people navigate those competing priorities and work more effectively across different departments.
It can. It encourages a more flexible and adaptive approach to leadership, one that recognizes the value of both leading and following, and the importance of responding to different levels of complexity.
Okay, so here's something for our listener to ponder. Think about which stage of the Lax Plus developmental model resonates most with your current roles and responsibilities. How might understanding the other stages inform your own professional development and your interactions with colleagues in different parts of your organization?
Hmm.
And what would it look like for you to become more versatile in your own approach to leadership and followership in all the different contexts you work in?
That's a great question to reflect on. I think this model can be a really powerful tool for personal and professional growth.
Absolutely. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for listening.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive. Until then, keep learning and keep leading.
And following too, don't forget that part.
Very true. Have a great week, everyone.
You too.